Newspapers in dementia units are near non-existent. For 30 people, there's generally about one newspaper available, with a third wanting to read and a third being able to read. The way that you can tell that dementia residents can read are many. To outline this, firstly, relatives will put in the clinical notes or the notes of the activities coordinator assessment that the dementia resident can still read. Next, dementia residents are often reading the titles of magazines and newspapers out loud at the front desk and for others to hear. They also love reading the subtitles at the bottom of the karaoke songs and the David Attenborough programs, which they'll read out loud to others as well. They read their names, they read others' names on the doors in the corridors, and they take an interest in reading. They like to read and they like to be able to read, and especially the newspaper, because of this elderly generation. They've read the newspaper every day for most of their life, practically all of them. So they know the format, they've received all their, the daily news and views and international news. They like to keep up. They always say they like to keep up. They need to know what's going on and how they're going to know if they haven't got the newspaper. So they request the newspaper avidly, but generally there's only one copy available for the whole unit, and that's provided by the unit for the activity coordinator to read at the press reading each morning. So it's usually not available until after the press reading, which is finished, mid-morning, late morning. So you're lucky to be able to get a page of it throughout the day when that one newspaper is shared with 30 people. For those people, one or two, who have got the newspaper because their power of attorney has accepted it, they tend to like to keep the newspaper to themselves and read it often for 2-3 hours a day because, it's interesting. It relieves the boredom, and more than that, it keeps them up to speed. So they don't really want to lend it out as a habit. Otherwise, they don't get to read it themselves. I mean, occasionally they will, but on most accounts, they read it themselves. And then after they're finished, they'll hand it on. But the thing is, dementia residents like the latest news. They do not like an old newspaper. Like the old days at home, they always like to know what was happening that day, not yesterday or last week. They don't mind old magazines, but they don't like old newspapers. So it just needs to be alerted to the public that this is indeed happening, that dementia residents who have so little voice, no voice really, this needs to be heard, that they want the newspaper, they need the newspaper, those that can read and those that wish to have the newspaper, at least those people, to give them the chance of being able to have one. It's very simple to just work out whether your parent can read or not. I mean, the thing is though, if they're asking for the newspaper, generally they can read. Otherwise, they wouldn't be asking for it. But if you want to test it, just the way to do this, I'll explain. Okay, so firstly, choose a good time and a good day when they're in a good mood. Don't ask them when they're in the middle of a high anxiety event to read, or when they're in the middle of a dementia blank. Make sure they're settled and relaxed. That's the first thing. Secondly, make sure they've got their glasses to be able to read. So many dementia residents don't have glasses, and certainly not prescription glasses, and so they can't read because of that. So they need prescription glasses, and they need to be clean. So all that set up, all you do is you get the newspaper or a magazine, maybe a favourite magazine if it's your mother that she's familiar with, and just ask her to read the front title on the magazine. Simple as that. Now, often what they do is they spell it out first, Queen, Queen, and then they'll read it, because they're out of practice. Most of them haven't been reading for quite some time, if not being given the information, material, newspapers and magazines to read. So see if she can read, and if she can, and if she wants to have the newspaper, then put in a subscription for her. What will happen is that it will be delivered to the front desk of the village, and then the nurses or carers from the dementia unit will bring it over each morning, and it will be given to her. So that would be a great service and a great blessing. If your parent could have a newspaper each morning, then they can happily read it in the sun, be occupied for 2 or 3 hours, and it keeps their cognition going, their reading going, their focus, their concentration. Helps so much to separate them from dementia stress and get that good line of positive quality thinking going with reading. Reading's a marvellous thing and an important thing to keep up. So I've written about these in the 2 books, The Resident's Voice and The Resident's Rise, all about these topics. Lots of information. Good reading, easy reading, happy reading on Amazon and my website below. Thank you for your subscriptions and your comments and your likes.